I just want to show you some news stories that will give you an idea about this coronavirus. And it will show you that what we've got here is a global panic that has been stirred up by the mass media. The mass media, and people have counted this, has generated 1.1 billion stories about the coronavirus. This is different to SARS and MERS, where the total number of stories were like 20 million and 50 million. This is unprecedented. The mass media has gone absolutely crazy over this thing. And now the governments are acting on this insanity. And they've done unprecedented things by literally shutting down the economies of the entire Western world. And this virus is nothing as dangerous as things that have come before. Even in recent times, the Spanish flu infected 500 million people, and it killed 10% of the 500 million. It killed at least 50 million people. That's equal to the number of people who died in World War II. That is double the number of people who died in World War I. And when that disease was doing the rounds, they didn't shut down entire countries. They carried on as normal. This disease doesn't even have a death rate of 10%. And unlike the Spanish flu, which could kill young people and people of good health, this thing only targets the really old, and they already have to be very sick before they die from it. So the Italians have had the biggest outbreak of the coronavirus. And here you can see it says, Italian government study, 99% of their coronavirus fatalities were already sick, half diagnosed with 3 or more diseases. So only 1% of the people allegedly dying from the coronavirus actually died from the coronavirus. And you can see this is on a website called Green Med Info. And it says, serious doubts about the accuracy of COVID-19 testing methods, results, mortality rates, and the supposed unique and extreme lethality of this virus are starting to emerge, even within the mainstream media and government reporting. A recent study by Italy's National Health Authority found that nearly everyone who was pronounced dead from COVID-19 was already struggling with serious chronic diseases. Then it cites the Bloomberg article. But if you look here it says, the Rome-based institute has examined medical records of about 18% of the country's coronavirus fatalities, which I'm guessing the best I can come up with is that if they looked at 18% of the fatalities, you're looking at like about 500, more than 500 people. Finding that just 3 victims, or 0.8% of the total, had no previous pathology. So in other words, the coronavirus, of the people who died, and most of them are old and infirm anyway, only 0.8% of them died from the actual virus. Whereas with the Spanish flu, it was 10% of everybody who got it. In other words, the Spanish flu was more than 10 times as dangerous as the coronavirus. And it says, almost half of the victims suffered from at least 3 prior illnesses, and about a fourth had either 1 or 2 previous conditions. More than 75% had high blood pressure, about 35% had diabetes, and a third suffered from heart disease. What I want to add is that I've come across mention that according to the Chinese, and I don't know how reliable the Chinese are, I would think the Italians and the Germans are more reliable, but for what it's worth, the Chinese say that the main causative factor that they found for their coronavirus deaths was people who had lung disease. It was smoking. So that is what the Chinese found. And it goes on to say, the median age of the infected is 63, but most of those who die are older. And the average age of those who've died from the virus in Italy is 79.5. These people are already old and very sick. All of Italy's victims under 40 have been males with serious existing medical conditions. So that is just what was coming out of Italy. In other words, this chart that you see here, this shows all the people who died apparently from coronavirus. The reality is that tiny, tiny, thin yellow line there are the actual number of people in the study who had died only from the coronavirus. All the others had other issues. 1 illness, 2 illnesses, 3 illnesses. In fact, almost half of the people who died had 3 illnesses other than the coronavirus. And it goes on to say that when you are testing for it, you need to fulfill these 4 scientific principles, otherwise your tests are not valid. And so here you can see the Bloomberg article. 99% of those who died from the virus had other illnesses. I also want to add that I found an Italian article from the 23rd of January, which is when about the first coronaviruses were detected. And on the 23rd of January, at the time that this thing just began in Italy and only a handful of people had died, at that point in time, they said that Italy had 2.8 million people with flu, and that it was normal to have that number of people with flu at this time of year, and that at that point in time, 240 or so had died. And they said that the 240 that had died was less than the predicted amount based on the annual flu epidemics. So there was absolutely nothing in Italy that was indicating that this thing is a danger. Italy has got lots of people who get flu and die from it every year. So does Germany. So do all the other European countries. So does America. In America, more than 30 to 40,000 people die from the flu every year. And here you can see the age structure of these people who are dying. And these people are mostly 80 to 89. These are very old people. And they've got to be sick as well. You can see that people under 50 and under 30, children, coronavirus does virtually nothing to them. And here is an article in Italian, and here is the translation of the Italian article. And it says here, coronavirus in Italy, there are only 2 deaths as ascertained so far due to COVID-19. And this is on the 13th of March. At this point, they'd only determined that only 2 of the 3,000 or whatever supposed deaths, only 2 were people who died only due to coronavirus. So that should give you an idea that this thing and the reaction to it is completely insane. And it says here, the age groups over 70 with a peak between 80 to 89 years. Those are the people who die. And finally, I want to show you this thing. This comes from the American Academy of Dermatology. And it says COVID-19 update. And it says, dermatologists should avoid non-essential contacts. And then it goes on to say, it's got this thing here. It says, there is a coordinated effort from the very top of the medical profession to direct doctors to shut down, which seems to be a very questionable overreaction. We have many clients who are doctors, who are free thinkers, and are questioning what is going on. One has written in, Marty, please understand that most doctors do not view this pandemic from a stance of arrogance. It is rather that most doctors today are simply ignorant of real scientific medicine. They are followers, doing as they are told from their administrators and elected leaders of the various medical societies, who are just as ignorant of the potential threat. Many doctors today do not know how to evaluate tests or stratify risk. They simply look at the result and accept it. They accept whatever is written in the journals without thinking critically about the matter. Now, there does seem to be something unusual going on at the apex of the medical decision-making pyramid, but I don't know where it originates. So this guy is saying that there are certain doctors who are trying to shut down this overreaction, that it's not necessary. Even the South African doctor who was the person who diagnosed the very first case of COVID-19 in South Africa, even she was quoted as saying she's kind of irritated by the way people are carrying on about this. It was as if she was indicating that this is much ado about nothing, that this is a total overreaction. Doctors and scientists are used to dealing with all these kinds of problems. Leave them alone. They will determine whether this is a high-risk issue. It's got nothing to do with politicians to thrust this down on them. If they think it's a serious issue, they will escalate it.